All right. Hey, everybody. Hey, Alan. How are you doing?
Good, Matt. How you doing?
Doing good. We're doing another episode here of the podcast yet to be named. Alan, we got to take some time and figure that out here.
Yeah, we're
Uh,
gonna put our heads together on that.
I think after the first few episodes, I know we've been bouncing some different ideas around. One of the topics we'll be going over today is called a virtual family office and what that is. The VFO, the acronym will be. Maybe we'll put that in the title to some degree. We'll see. Um, But more to come on that, everybody. The virtual family office and what that means. It applies to the main topic of today, which is building wealth and how to have a plan around how to build long term wealth, dare I say, generational wealth. As a leader of my family, that's something I'm after, right?
Yep.
Alan, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
It's hard enough to make it. But it's even harder to keep it. So,
Hmm.
good,
That's a great
good
point. By
thing
the
to be
way,
thinking about.
it's not about how much money you make. It is about how much money you keep. And that is a very, very important concept that ties back to a lot of things tax wise, um, which I know we were covering last time. But it's about what you keep at the end of the day. And boy, they come at you from lots of ways. They come after you income, capital gains, and when you die, the I call it death tax to remind people what it is.
Yeah,
You might know of it as estate taxes, but they're covering after you every which way for that stuff, aren't they?
gotta have a plan for it all. Unfortunately.
Right. I plan for it all. So the topic for today is building wealth, right? We're going to be talking about that, just some cornerstone things to think about. As we were preparing for this episode, Alan and I were talking about how we're typically used to talking to people about this is surrounding their very unique, individualized situations. So it's very customized to the individual or the family that we're talking with around their very, very specific situation and goals. And we were talking about how to talk about this in an abstract way broadly, frankly, can be kind of difficult. We're going to give it a go here. We're going to talk about it a little bit and just kind of some general core things. And maybe for future episodes, having more nuanced case consulted. Like, here's an example of someone in this situation, how they might be thinking about this.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that, but yeah,
No,
that's kind of
yeah, it's a good point. It's hard to plan for things generally, but there are some general things you could do help keep you on track, make sure you're on track. So, when it gets down into the nitty gritty, that's when we can really add value. But just sharing generally the direction you should be headed and how you should be thinking about things, I think would
yeah.
be really helpful.
Yeah, so we're going to do that today, and just know that in the future, there's going to be more specific examples of how you might tackle certain situations if you're in them, and I think that'll be a helpful exercise. But for today, we're going to be generally. So, building wealth. What does that mean? Right? We've all heard of the prototypical investment manager, like financial advisor, investment managers. We think when we think building wealth, we think maybe real estate, maybe we think investment portfolios. What does that mean? Building wealth, how do we go about that? How do we structure some of the activities or things we're doing to make sure that we're moving in that direction? Um, as business owners, first and foremost, I always tell young, sometimes, and some people listening to this might be able to relate to this. Some of the younger folks who are just getting started, they'll say, "Oh, do I need to just contact the state and make sure my business is registered and all these different things." And yeah, we want to be compliant with stuff like that. But the most important thing is that we're profitable, right? Uh,
Yeah.
let's get a profitable business going here.
You got to
Um,
make it to build it, right? I mean, that's
right. Yeah. You got to have, get some profits in, and then we'll start crossing the T's and dotting the I's once we know we've got a viable thing here. Right.
right.
And so, assuming that you're up and going, you've got some profits going, it's time to start coming together with a holistic plan around the things that you want to be doing with your life. And it's not just about your business, right? And what I want folks to start thinking about that are listening is when you think about your business, you think about the money that your business produces, maybe someday the value of what your business is worth, and any sort of savings or other investment vehicles that you ultimately will have, whether they're an investment portfolio or some real estate, some investment real estate, we have to continually be thinking about what is the purpose of those assets. And the purpose of the assets are what's going to drive the investments that you should be investing in, right? And when we think about wealth building, the most important aspect of that is getting a set of goals down for what you're trying to accomplish, right? Having a conversation about that and getting real clear about what your goals are. And then getting in a habitual, getting some habits set up where you're continually working towards those goals, right?
Right.
And Alan, I know that you work with business owners on this and talk to them about that. And business is part of it, but having some goals set for growing the business, and then I'll let Alan talk a little bit about that, and then I'll tie back to how this actually ties into your personal life as well, because it's not just about growing the business.
Yeah, it's sort of like going to the gym, right? You got to have a plan for when you go to the gym, and then you have to be disciplined and get those reps in. So that's the analogy I like to use.
Yeah. And so one of the things when we conceptually think about this, having those goals outlined. So if you think about you have a business, you have profits coming in, where do you want to be in 1 year? Right? I know this sounds like the job. Where do you want to be in 3 years? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Okay, we're to tangent on this really quick. I had the best answer I ever heard on that, because I hated those interview questions. Where are you going to be at? Where do you want to be in 5 years? Right? And that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the corporate answer. We're talking about really where do you want to be. But the best answer I ever heard on that, some guy on a stage full of business owners, some of the speakers had pointed at somebody in the crowd and said, where do you want to be in 5 years? And the guy stood up. They brought him a microphone over to him. It's just some random guy in the crowd. He goes, I want to be on top of my wife naked in 5 years. And he's like, that's the dumbest question ever. Like, don't ask me that when you don't know. You don't even care. You're not even asking. Anyway, right. I thought that was a hilariously great answer for a completely pointless question.
Yeah.
We're asking it in this context. Truly, 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 what do you want your life to look like? What do you want your business to look like? If you're 1 year out, 5 years out, in 5 years, do you see yourself having, if you own an HVAC company, if you own any other trades business, what do you ideally want that to look like? 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road? And you might say, I don't know. I don't know what I want. And it's going to change. We hear that all of the time. We've got to have targets set out. We have to have targets set out. And it's important for you to really think about what it is that you want. And having someone to walk you through that, and maybe you don't know what you want or how to quantify that, but getting clear on the direction that you want to go. Professionals like Alan and I, if you say, yeah, I want to have 10 producing people underneath me, and I want to have XYZ of revenue for my business and XYZ profitability, we can work those numbers backwards and come up with a game plan of doing A, B, C, or X, Y, and Z. And Alan, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
No, it's important. I think as a lot of business owners out there, they just have their head down, working as hard as they can to make as much as they can. But sometimes you got to take the time to do the planning, to figure out where you're headed, and just sort of have that deep focus. So, because I always say you hit the target you're aiming at. So what are we aiming at? You got to have that clear mental picture of where you want to be, and then start to develop the plan backwards on the steps necessary to get there.
Yeah. And I like to say what you're talking about, you're talking about, we all as business owners get into the grind of it, right?
Yeah.
And I call that working in the business, right, instead of on the business. And from time to time, and I have professionals that I work with, obviously, which any good business owner should have. When I get together with them, it's like I'm sitting up on this like pedestal looking down at everything I've got going on. I remove myself from working in the business to working on the business, so I can make strategic decisions around, the next day when I get back into the grind, we're going in the right direction, right? We're readjusting and headed in the right direction. And if we don't have those 10, 5, 3, 1 year goals, we don't know where we're headed, and we can't make strategic decisions on how to get there, right? So that's the first thing.
Yeah. Very
Very,
intentional.
very intentional.
Yeah.
The other thing is the personal side of thing, and I think this is a lot of times as business owners we don't get to talk about this as much. Um, but this is an incredibly important thing. I think for a lot of people, family is important. The personal side of this is important, right? We all should have personal goals. I live in Minnesota. Alan, I know you're outside of St. Louis in Missouri. You
Yep.
guys got some big lakes down there. The dream here in Minnesota is everybody wants to have a cabin. We call it a cabin, second home, let's call it. The cabins are not really cabins anymore. They're second homes. In northern Minnesota, from the Twin Cities, where you got another home on a lake, right? Where you can catch some walleye, maybe have a boat, right? That's a whole nother goal, right? Depending how nice the boat is. But whatever those things are, and that might not be your goal, but you've got to have other things you're trying to accomplish. For sometimes it's people want to have money set aside for their kids to go to college, or have money set aside for their kid to start a business. That's something that my wife and I are doing. It's not just for college anymore. I won't say anything on that, but I don't know if I want my kids to go to college, or maybe they have got a different goal, right? So it's for lots of things. That's important to me. And I think having a deep and meaningful discussion or process, and that is the key here, process to go through, so you can really extract and figure out what is most important to you, knowing fully well that we can adjust and change that because our lives change and things they're important for us at one point and then it changes, right?
Right.
And we can always pivot. But figuring out what are these things that we want to accomplish and when do we want to accomplish them? And once professionals have that information, we can outline a plan on how to go attack that, right? Sometimes, Alan, I'm sure you can appreciate this, when we have clients that'll come and say, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z on this date. And we can say, okay, well, maybe if you can do this, this, and this, that's possible. And sometimes when we outline the steps that are necessary for that to happen, it's like, okay, well, maybe that won't happen this year, but it might happen in 3 years. It might take 5 years. And that's a valuable exercise to go through. And I can't even tell you how many times I've had people that I've been working with that they won't even bring up something that they want. They'll have a dream or a wish or a want because they think it's unacceptable. A business owner might say, yeah, I own a business, but it's really a business that I run. It's a job that I have essentially, but I own my own business. And I could really never run an organization with multiple employees and scale it that way. And it's like, yeah, why not? Oh, I couldn't afford it. I'd have to do this and I'd have to do that. And I just, wouldn't be able to do it. It's like, okay, well, let's say you were like, paint that picture for me. What would it look like in an ideal world? And then they do it. And we work those steps backwards. And all of a sudden it becomes a real tangible thing. When you see that, you might say like, yeah, actually, I don't want to do that. It's too much work. Right. And that's fair. So everybody's different. Right.
Yeah.
I want to do this
one
instead.
size fits all to your goals. I mean, it's for you.
It's for you. It's absolutely for you. And there's these gurus online and everywhere else, and they're like, oh, this is the right way to do building wealth, and this is the wrong way. It's truly is about what is most important to you, right? And, if you're somebody who's like, you're trying to grow your business and you want to hand it off to your son next day and the next generation, maybe you just want to grow your business. If you're somebody who wants to retire someday, hang it up, sell the business, cash out. There's a different plan for that. Right? There's different tax planning. There's different financial planning. There's different steps along the way. And getting clear about what your goals are and getting habitual about doing the things necessary to reach those goals is the biggest key to wealth building. Right? Yeah. And we're going to dive into the nuance of the different, like how to build, maybe how to think about an investment portfolio. Right? Because these are things that are important. And I think Alan, maybe you have some thoughts on this, but one of the things I'm most excited about this podcast is from talking to folks in trades. There's a lot of distrust with a lot of the traditional, let's call it wealth building strategies. And I mean, i.e. investment portfolios, those kind of things. And I think it's got a lot of reasons, but part of it is sometimes there's some unsavory folks and mine and Alan's line of work, and people get to take advantage of, quite frankly, sometimes. The reality is there is a done the right way, right, for the right reasons, understanding risks and having the proper goals and utilizing these things, there's opportunities. And one of the things I'm most excited about is to bring this in a real and meaningful way to folks that don't get a lot of exposure to this, just what your professions are in the trades, right? Alan, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
No, I think you're spot on. So many people are underserved in this area, and and there is some mistrust, and it could be because they were sold something that really wasn't in their best interest. And I would call that being underserved. I don't think anyone maliciously did it, but they just didn't take the time to understand their personal situation and the context to it, and deliver a service or a product that they really needed. So, yeah.
Right. And I think you bring up a great point. This is about a process. It's not about a product, right? Whether it's something Alan's selling or I'm selling, or I'm not selling anything. It's about bringing someone through a process,
yeah,
and getting them in front of the person that can best help them whatever their issues are. And that's really what I want to talk on. The core of all of this, as you can tell, is the process. There's a process to identify what's important to you, what the opportunities are in your individual situation, what gaps there are in your individual situation. And the reality is it's possible that you might not need help from a tax expert. You might not need help from a financial planner. Yeah. You might need help from a different professional, right? And this is where what we call our virtual family office comes into play. And this is something that's taken 10 years for us to build. But this is something that we're excited about. And when I say a process, I genuinely mean it. So when you sit down with a professional, the goal should not be to lead you to whatever that professional has to offer, i.e. sell to you, right? Mm-hmm. When you're talking about holistic planning, it really should be about a conversation that's exceptionally broad, right? It could cover your business, your financials, legal services, right? Do you have, Alan was talking about business structure before. That sometimes involves getting in an attorney, but also estate planning, right? For you young guys out there, I know it's like, yeah, whatever, I'll worry about that later. We're going to talk about that more in our next podcast, but getting all of these things integrated together. And, I know Alan will agree with this. Once you get outside the wheelhouse of taxes, Alan is not your guy. I know a ton about investments, and frankly, a ton about insurance. Once we get out of those core competencies, I'm not your guy. And what I think our industries, both Alan and mine, do a poor job of making sure that we're asking very broad questions about everything you've got going on, and really understanding what your business is about and what you are about, so we can identify gaps and opportunities. And actually, I don't say refer, Alan. I don't know if we've had this conversation before. But I say I like to lead you to someone that can help you get whatever it is that you need done. Mm-hmm. And so what this virtual family office is it's a group of, it's over 70 different experts now. They're niche experts that we have the ability to introduce you to, should you have a strategy that they can actually implement and should matter to you. And we don't, the reality is you're never going to work with all of them. They're very niche strategies. But boy, when we identify the opportunities where those folks can help, we want to make that introduction and actually lead you through that process. So it's not just hey, go talk to them. It's no, let's get this done because it's valuable, right? So Alan doesn't have any thoughts on that.
No, I think you covered that.
I just said it perfectly.
Yeah, you nailed it.
I nailed it. Okay, good. No, so and this is a very different thing, right? And so I would just say, with whoever you're working with, and family offices exist Yeah, I feel like I'm doing this in the wrong order. I'm all over the place here. What a family office traditionally came from. Maybe I should explain where they come from.
I think it is a
Um,
unique thing. It probably warrants a little explanation. And
yeah, I should explain some of where they come from. You hear this virtual family office. What does that mean? Think of it as a mind hive of a whole bunch of different experts that have a very niche expertise lane that they work and they help with people, right? And so the question becomes, how do we find those opportunities for you and which one of those experts to be talking to? Because there's obviously not going to be um, strategies that everyone's going to be able to take advantage of. A family office, that idea, the concept came from millionaire families, billionaire families, the wealthiest families in the country. As you might imagine, those folks don't have an accountant that works with anyone else except them. They don't have a financial planner that works with anyone else but them. They don't have an attorney that works with anyone else but them. And so they had their own small office, family office, where these people come together every day and think about how do we optimize this tax, financial, legal plan for this family, their businesses, all of their businesses integrated together. If they have multiple businesses, how do we optimize that? And so this concept of a family office came about. And what we want to do is we want to be able to take this to the masses, right? We want to be able to, because the reality is there's just a lot of opportunities for folks that don't have millions of dollars to take advantage of the tax code and other different strategies from that perspective.
Yeah.
And we think there should be a process to bring folks through that can help with that. And by the way, this isn't a completely brand new concept. I wanted to explain where that comes from. It's just sometimes it gets up into the higher echelons of net worth before
Right.
it makes sense to get into that space.
Well, it's pretty expensive when you have all those professionals just dedicated to one particular person. But the focused attention on the specific strategy of that family is, that's where I think they truly add value, and that's why we work so well together when we're collaborative.
Right. And that collaboration is key. I always say the collaboration is key. So, what I would just say, whether this is through Guardian Businesses Advisors, and by the way, Alan and his team is the doorway into that virtual family office that we're talking about here. But he's not the only one that's doing this. This does exist. I would say it's a minority of business advisors. I don't even want to say tax because it can happen in any sort of one of these core, whether it's financial or tax. But the reality is people are siloed up, like we talked about previously. Tax pros want to work on taxes. Financial people want to work on investments. Attorneys want to work on the legal stuff. And you get that collaboration happening on your situation once all the experts understand what your situation is. Magical things can happen, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
Because we're all looking at it from our own professional lenses, and that collaboration together allows us to deliver a better experience to clients. So, that's the concept of a family office, and it's just important people to understand that and how it integrates into wealth building and financial planning.
Yeah, hard to really be effective when the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Yes, and unfortunately, that's just the norm, right?
Right.
And I think I can relate to this as somebody who owns a business. It drives me insane when I got to like twist my CPA's arm to go talk to my attorney. Like, yeah, you guys need to get together and figure this out. We're not playing a game of telephone, right? And I'm pretty good at the game of telephone because I've got some experience in this. If you're cranking on pipes all day and you don't have any background in this, it's really hard for you to play that game of telephone.
Yep.
It's very, very important for your professionals to be collaborating together and having a process that allows them to execute that in an efficient way,
Yep.
right? Because it's just never going to happen. You're never going to be able to communicate with all those different professionals and make sure that you're identifying every opportunity in the tax code or every other financial opportunity that you've got going on with whatever your particularly unique situation is. Yeah. So that process is a very important one.
Absolutely.
Alan, what else? Should we wrap?
Uh, what else do we? What else should we cover here? Um, how about signs of a bad financial advisor, Matt? Or maybe that's not the best way to put it, but I mean, signs that you're not the best fit for your financial advisor.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to think there's, obviously these people exist, but nobody's out there to like rob you blind or anything like that. What I would just say is, thinking about who you're working with. I kind of alluded to it. Siloed up.
Yeah.
Folks that are just focused on one lane of things, because they think about it. If you're meeting with me and my business is selling widgets, and you set up an appointment with me, I'm going to find every reason to sell you a widget, right?
Yeah, right.
And the reality is when you are sitting down with a professional, you don't want to be sold a product in this space, right? Like if you're buying a computer, yeah, I get it. If I'm meeting with the Apple at the Apple store, they're going to sell me an Apple product, right? But what we're talking about here is really around advice, which is a process to figure out what is the best solution for you, regardless of where you have to go to get it, right? Yeah. And so many times when it comes to financial professionals or any sort of commodity, any sort of like service, the professional you're talking to wants to lead them to the service that they provide, right? And so I would just say that if you get done with something and you're getting sold a product, that's not what you're after. You might eventually get to that, but you need to start with a process.
Yeah,
right.
A consultative process.
A very consultative process. That person needs to really understand everything you've got going on from a business and personal standpoint before any sort of recommendation should be made. That plan, having that plan in place, the executable plan should be there. Right. And then it becomes, all right, you need XYZ product to do that. And by the way, we need these 4 professionals or 3 professionals, whatever they are, to help execute those things. Yep. And so that's what I would just say is, you don't be sold a product, right? It should be consultative, right?
Like going to the doctor. You go into the doctor, you tell them what's going on, and they're going to ask you a bunch of questions and figure out, well, what do we really need to do here?
Right. Yep. And you go meet a generalist doctor, right? You meet with a generalist, and then they're going to refer you out. Like, oh, I've got this weird thing going on with my foot. They're going to go, and by the way, this is a horrible analogy for me because I don't know anything about anything medical. So it's I don't know, what is a foot doctor called? A podiatrist? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that never happens. My mom had she makes me call it a mini stroke. It was a mini stroke. God bless her. She's doing fine. But when I had to go like listen to the doctor explain that to me, it was like, I was like, dude, you need to re-explain that. And you need to talk to me like I'm 13 years old because I don't speak that language. And so there's lots of people that don't speak this language, Alan. I know you and I both know that.
Right.
And we haven't done our job right and I know you feel this way, Alan, your business hasn't done its job right if people that are sitting down with you guys don't understand what their options are and understand what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I'm not here to teach them the tax code, obviously, but they got to understand the bottom line and what actions they need to take, and what are the drivers of the decision they need to make.
Right. All right, good. So what do we have next go around,
Alan? Estate planning. We're going to talk a little bit about estate
planning. Anybody listening, I know it's like, oh, what does that even mean? Estate planning. Or if you do know what it means, you're probably thinking, well, that sounds lame.
Yeah.
And
anyone who's ever been through probate will disagree that it is
right. Anybody who's been through probate will disagree.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what that means, we're going to go into it in more detail. And I'll say this: if you've got kids and you haven't even done your estate plan or haven't even thought about it, whoops, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
And I'll just leave it at that. This is an important thing from a financial planning perspective. We'll get into the details of it next time. But Alan, thank you. I hope everybody has just a better understanding of what a good process for wealth building is. Yeah. And we'll pick things up next time. Estate planning.
Great. Well, thanks, Matt.
All right. Very good. Thanks, Alan. Bye-bye, everybody.